In a quiet neighborhood in the heart of Indiana, where kids still played on the sidewalks and everyone knew each other by name, lived Michael. Light brown hair, a shy smile, and a heart bigger than he realized. Michael was the kind of boy who helped elderly neighbors carry groceries, lent his notebook to classmates, and above all, harbored a silent love since the age of 8. Her name was Emily. Emily had moved in with her mom to her grandmother's house right after her parents' divorce. From the first day at the small public school, she stood out. Her eyes were bright and curious, her laughter infectious, and her intelligence shone through. But it wasn't just her looks that captured hearts, it was her spirit. Emily was light, and Michael had been drawn to it from the start. They were best friends, partners in flying kites, chalk drawings on the pavement, and whispered secrets on slow summer afternoons. Michael was Emily's silent guardian. When a kid made fun of her braces, it was Michael who stood up for her. When she cried about missing her dad, it was Michael's shoulder she leaned on. He never said a word, never confessed how he felt. He thought being close was enough. That someday, when they were older, she'd see it too. But time impatient and relentless had other plans. At 14, Emily left town with her mom. A job opportunity in another state, a fresh start. There were no dramatic goodbyes, only a promise made between kids to keep writing. Letters that never came. Michael stayed. He grew up. Became a mechanic, hardworking, grounded, kind. A guy everyone waved to on Main Street, who drank black coffee at the diner every morning. But he never forgot Emily. He kept a notebook with old photos, crumpled notes, even a small pebble she once gave him, saying it was from their Moonrock garden. Years passed and life moved on. Until one day, nearing 30, while fixing a truck engine in the garage, he overheard a radio interview. The name Emily Moore popped up in a segment about rising graphic designers. It was her. Her voice, more mature now, still carried that same laugh he knew by heart. His chest tightened. Pride, longing, and a twinge of something deeper. In the days that followed, Michael started searching. Social media, articles, anything. He found her profile. She looked stunning. She had lived abroad, studied in New York, and now seemed to be back in the States. And more, her latest photos were taken in familiar places. She was back in town. The call was clear as the Indiana sky. Find her. But then came the refusal. Michael felt small compared to the world she now lived in. Who was he, really? A small-town mechanic, still living in the same house, same friends, and she. She was a star. He considered letting it go, preserving only the memory. But fate had other plans. Because at the end of that same week, while helping set up a stage for the town's annual 4th of July celebration, he saw her. Across the street, in a blue dress, snapping photos of the restored gazebo, Emily was there. And her eyes, when they met his, sparkled just like the first day of school. Michael's heart was a mess of nerves and hope as he walked across the street that warm evening, fireworks faintly crackling in the distance. He hadn't seen her in over 15 years, but in that moment, as she turned and their eyes locked again, everything felt familiar, timeless. "Emily?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. She smiled, slow and surprised. "Michael? Oh my God." They talked. Standing by the old gazebo, surrounded by fairy lights and the distant music of a country band warming up, they shared where life had taken them. Michael told her about the auto shop, about how he'd stayed close to home. Emily spoke of the cities she'd lived in, the people she'd met. Her eyes sparkled as she described her work designing children's book covers, that there was a softness, a tenderness when she looked at Michael, like she was seeing something she hadn't realized she missed. Over the next few weeks, they began meeting more often. Morning coffee runs, late-night talks in the park, helping each other with odd errands. Michael felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. Emily confided in him things she never posted on social media, that she felt alone in the big cities, that success never filled a certain void she couldn't explain. Michael became her anchor again, her safe place, but things were never simple. Emily had a fiancé, a kind, successful architect she had met in New York. The wedding was in 2 months. It had been planned for over a year, and Michael, he never told her how he really felt. One afternoon, Michael sat on his porch with his old friend Derek, the town's mailman and amateur poet. Derek had always been the one to give odd, sometimes profound advice. "You know," Derek said, sipping lemonade, "love is a lot like fixing an engine. You ignore that knock long enough, and the whole thing falls apart. Maybe it's time you stop being the silent guy." That night, Michael almost did it, almost told Emily he loved her. But she showed up glowing, talking about wedding dresses and color palettes, and he couldn't. Then came the tests. Her fiancé arrived in town. Charming, polished, clearly fond of Emily. Michael watched from a distance as they walked hand in hand through the farmer's market, as Emily introduced him to old friends. It was like watching his dream fade in real time. Yet, Emily still found time for Michael, still met him for coffee, still smiled that same smile. One night, they sat on the hood of his truck under the stars, and she whispered, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I never left?" "All the time," Michael replied. The threshold had been crossed. Michael knew he couldn't go back to just watching her life from the sidelines. He had to face his feelings even if it was too late. The days leading up to the wedding blurred into a quiet agony for Michael. Emily had asked him to help with some of the logistics, setting up lights for the reception, fixing a vintage convertible her fiancé had rented for the ceremony. Michael said yes to everything. Being near her, even now, felt better than letting her go completely. But each moment spent by her side was a test of endurance. Seeing her laugh with guests, watching her fiancé place a gentle hand on her back, it tore at something deep inside him. He tried to tell himself he was doing the right thing. That love didn't always mean getting the girl. Sometimes love meant letting go. Still, Emily lingered. In quiet glances, in soft touches on the arm, in the way her eyes searched for him when she entered a room. There was something unresolved, hanging between them like the final note of a song never played. The night before the wedding, the town's old barn hosted the rehearsal dinner. The space was filled with rustic charm mason jars glowing with candles. Long wooden tables covered in wildflowers, a local band playing soft folk tunes in the background. Michael stood near the back, dressed in his best shirt, trying not to feel out of place among Emily's polished friends from the city. Emily found him near the lemonade stand. "Come for the drinks or the sympathy?" she asked with a teasing smile. Michael gave a half laugh. "A little of both, maybe." They stood in silence, the music washing over them. "You've been quiet lately," she said, turning more serious. "I feel like you're holding something back." He met her eyes. "I am, but it doesn't change anything now, does it?" Before she could respond, Someone called her name. She hesitated, then gave him a look intense and soft all at once before walking away. The next morning, Michael found an envelope slipped under his door. His heart raced as he picked it up. It was the wedding invitation, cream-colored, gold-lettered, elegant. But what caught his breath wasn't the printed text. It was the note scribbled on the back, in her unmistakable handwriting. Michael, I'm marrying a good man, but I need you to know, the great love of my life has always been you. Emily. He sat down, the world spinning. So many feelings at once: joy, heartbreak, confusion, regret. He drove. Without knowing where he was going, he let the road guide him. Past the cornfields, beyond the old mill, until he found himself at the lake where they used to go as kids. The same dock, the same still water. He sat there, the letter in hand, and let everything out. All the times he didn't speak. All the chances he let slip away. Now he had the truth. She loved him, but she was marrying someone else. The ordeal wasn't just about fighting for her. It was about deciding if he could forgive himself for waiting so long, and whether he was brave enough to do something about it now. The reward wasn't certain. But in that moment, under a sky turning gold with morning light, Michael finally knew what he had to do. Michael sat by the lake until the sun fully rose, casting its golden light over the still waters and the worn dock where so many childhood memories lingered. The letter from Emily lay in his lap, already smudged from his hands, but its message was etched into his soul. He returned home only long enough to wash up and change. The streets of the town were stirring with wedding day anticipation. White flowers adorned the church steps. Guests were already arriving, but Michael wasn't headed there. He was going to Emily. At her mother's house, he was greeted with a pause, then a knowing nod. "She's upstairs," her mother said softly. Michael climbed the stairs like a man on the edge of a cliff, heart pounding, every step a prayer. The door to Emily's room was half open. Inside, she sat before the mirror in her white gown, veil hanging beside her. Untouched, he knocked gently. She met his eyes in the mirror. "You came," she said, barely more than a breath. "I had to." Emily stood slowly and turned to him. "Michael, I didn't mean to confuse you. I wasn't asking for anything. I just had to tell you the truth before I went through with something that didn't feel right." Michael stepped closer. "You didn't confuse me. You made everything clearer than it's ever been. I've spent so many years thinking I missed my chance, and maybe I did. But I couldn't to let you go without telling you what I should be," said a long time ago. He took her hands and she didn't pull away. "I've loved you since we were kids. You were the best part of my life, before I even knew what love was. And I don't know what the future looks like, but if there's even the smallest chance that it could include you, I had to try." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I hoped you'd come, even when I tried not to. Even when I told myself it was too late." They stood in silence, the kind that doesn't need words. Then, with a trembling hand, Emily reached for the veil and placed it gently on the vanity. "Will you walk with me?" she asked. "Anywhere," he said. They left the house quietly. The church bells began to ring as they drove away, not toward a wedding, but toward the life they had always imagined in the silence of their childhood dreams. Of course, there were questions. Friends who didn't understand. Family members with opinions. But over time, the noise faded. What remained was simple, honest, and deeply rooted in truth. Emily postponed her plans, took time to breathe and reimagine her life. Michael stood by her, not as the boy who waited too long, but as the man who showed up when it mattered most. Months later, they returned to that lake, not to mourn what could have been, but to celebrate what was. She sketched new characters for her children's book, inspired by their story. He brought coffee and quiet smiles, his hand always finding hers. They were no longer the kids who ran through summer fields and made castles from dreams. They were grown, changed by time, but unchanged in the way they saw each other. And when Emily published her first book, the dedication read, "To Michael, my first and forever friend, my late but lasting love."
The end.